Hey, design cutters, and welcome back. I'm so thrilled to welcome back our very good friend indeed, Kim Klassen. How are you, Kim?
Good. Tom, you say my name right. Amazing.
Did it? Okay. How do people normally say it?
A lot of people say Klassen. Thank you for saying Klassen. Klassen.
Yeah,
said it perfectly.
It's because I'm such a classy Brit. What can I say?
You're a proper Brit. Right?
Yes. Yeah. No, I do that with my pinky when I drink tea.
Hey guys.
Kim, are you like an organizational ninja historically when it comes to this? Because I've always struggled with this. I'm like personally excited for this session for that reason.
No, but okay. So we're going to talk about it and all of that. But honestly, up until recently, I was quite happy in the blur of all of the fonts, not worrying about them. And then I went down a rabbit hole, and I think I have some good ideas for people. So I think it's going to be good because let's face it, we're not going to stop adding to our font collection anytime soon, especially we've
had people on. Yeah. I mean, I feel a bit guilty about that because we've had some people on that have said they've got tens of thousands of fonts.
Yeah.
Like it truly gets ridiculous.
My goodness. Okay. Okay. That will make some of us feel much better. But yeah, so I have ideas and I hope people will stick with me right through it all before you start like going crazy and thinking you have to conquer it all in one step. Because that's, I think, a message I want to give to people. You don't have to figure it all out.
We're going to do this.
So I'm going to share my screen. The only reason I put together when I share my screen is a little keynote is to try to keep myself on track. So don't worry. It's not that formal. All right. I'm going to share my screen.
Have you got a laser pointer or something?
No, I've got my Wacom pen now.
Oh, there you go. That counts.
And my mouse is pink, so you'll see that too. Okay. Do you see?
Yes.
These are for you, Tom. Pink peonies.
My favorite. How did you know?
Okay. So for the love of fonts, seriously, I don't know. I love them so much. And I think most of us do. And is it just me? Or are they getting better and better?
I think they are.
I think they're getting better and better. But before we dive in, I'm not a designer. I'm not an expert. I don't have this all figured out, but I do have some ideas. And I'm really good at calming people down for the most part, although I get super excited. And there are many ways to sort your fonts. So I want you to know I'm only sharing the system that I find works. But how many fonts do we have? And I've tell me true, but we've done that already. We've all spilled our font. What is it called? Dirty laundry? Font laundry?
Yeah. We've aired our dirty laundry.
Yes, exactly. So I thought I'd start at the start because we're all in different places, and there's like some of us are like completely professional and some of us are brand new. Like some people have a few hundred fonts. I have people in my community that have never really downloaded fonts. So basically I wanted to touch on where the fonts are located, and I'm on a Mac, just so you know. So on our Mac, they're in a folder, libraries fonts. If you don't take control of it, that's where they'll go when you download your fonts. So I'm just going to pull up Finder, and if I go up to the Go menu, this is just one way to get to them. Go to Go and hold the Option key. Then I can get my library. And that little scribble is so annoying from this thing. Hang on. Toggle off drawing. Okay, there we go. So by default, your fonts will go into this fonts folder. And you'll notice I don't have very many in here. But these are DC fonts. So the reason I don't have very many in here, and I used to have all of them in here, is because of what I'm going to share with you today. So if you have a ton in here, it's totally okay. Totally okay. So I just wanted to say, if you go to Design Cuts and you download a font or fonts, let's bring it over. You come into Design Cuts, and we're going to look into this bundle, but first let's just go to like a single font.
And
so,
just quickly, because this is quite a recent change, if you're able to go to the top, please.
Yes.
We've now got it so you can immediately search and browse by category in your account section.
I love that.
Let us know in the chat if you were actually aware of this or not, because every time we mention this, people are like, what? I had no idea. So
game changing. Also, the way they drop down.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way they, like when you tap view files, they just are there. I just love that. I don't know. It's really good. So, okay, let's say this port filled font. You can check it out here, but we're just going to download it. And by tapping it, it's just going to download. And then once it's downloaded, wait a minute, I'm going to clear this. Did I download it? I could have swore I did. Okay, let's go to my download folder. And there we go. Okay, so I install... Okay, actually, I would love thoughts on this, really, just a few thoughts. I only do the OTF font.
Yeah.
I don't do the TTF. Anyone else? Just do, like, I don't do the TTF.
Same for me, Kim.
Yeah, okay. So what I do is I go get the OTFs. And by default, if you have these fonts highlighted and you double tap, it will just pop open the default font manager. See font book up top here. And I tap install font and install font. And that's it. See, this is why we collect a lot of fonts, because it's so quick. Like, we don't really have to work very hard to collect them and install them. So then because of that, we just keep collecting. So notice they're still in the download folder, but they're installed on my system. And if I open up font book, I can see those fonts here. Oops. Okay, this was when I was doing something. Anyhow, do you see how it's landed here in font book? So there's all fonts. These are system fonts and user fonts. And if you've never done anything but what we just did, this is where you'll find them. And we're not going to hang out in font book, but it is actually really good. You can create collections right in font book. You can change the text and how you preview them right in font book. So you can see I put in custom text. And if I come up here, I think it's up here. I don't do this right up here anyways. We'll go to view sample. I can see the sample text, but I can also go, so command 1, 2, 3. So command 2, command 3, not command 4. Let's do command 1. So one more thing though, just quickly in here, and we're not really going to hang out in here very long, but if you have a few fonts selected, so if I select a few different fonts, let's do Marigold, that's from Design Cuts 2, and let's command click, you can see a bunch of fonts at once in this preview option. And if you were trying to design something, if you go to the view and custom, you can put in some text, like if I wanted to do design cuts. Then I can start to see design cuts in all of its different ways based on the fonts I've chosen, or all of my fonts if I wanted to. I just don't have a lot in here. So there's actually more in here than I even realized. And trust me, I wasn't using it at all. They were just living here in users. So there's also collections in here, but we're going to look at my favorite app and we'll get to it. We'll get to it. But for now, before I leave font book, if you have all your fonts living in the users category, one thing you might consider doing is just spending a little time with your fonts, saying hi, looking at them again, some for the first time since you bought them. And if anything doesn't resonate with you, bye-bye. That's what I would do. That would be a good starting point, if nothing else.
Kim, I know we're on the Mac and we're in font book right now. I believe today you're going to be sharing some tips that are kind of quite ubiquitous in terms of how to think about organizing. So hopefully it's going to be valuable for everyone.
So yeah, PC people, I know it's annoying, for sure, but I don't know PC. But what I'll say is we're kind of looking at a system. So it's not necessarily, don't see the app and like shut down because it's not the app that you have. Because there's lots of font managers. Now, I don't know what the built-in one on the PC is, but Font Base is a font manager that a lot of people like. I know some people don't, but it's Windows and Mac. And font managers essentially all work very similarly. So what we've talked about so far is the idea of just getting to know your fonts, right? And getting rid of the ones that just don't really mean anything to you. And one thing you can do even in Font Book is create a collection, a fave fonts collection. Even if you do that and you get your favorite fonts so you can find them, and maybe you create a collection, like you start going through and selecting a bunch. Maybe you just have a collection that you're gathering and you're ready to let them go. So you can do that all from within Font Book. So you don't need to have an extra font manager, but I do have one that I really, really like. So let me, because I told you I made a keynote to basically just keep me on track. So we kind of did this by double clicking the font, but you can also drag your folder. So it's one thing to buy a font, that's easy. But if you get a bundle of fonts like Design Cuts Font Collector's Hand-Picked Selection, I think I have it loaded up here, which has some gorgeous classic fonts. My absolute favorite from this one. Can you guess what it is? Any guesses? What favorite one?
Is it La Lux?
Tom, of course it is.
Yay! I know you so well.
Partly because I mean, I didn't even know immediately, but it's by Set Sail Studios, and I think I have most of their fonts. So good, so good. And so yeah, Lilux is my favorite. But this collection, if you bought it, if you didn't buy it, well, I know we're trying to get over hoarding fonts, but really, it's lovely.
We're not trying to get over hoarding fonts. We're trying to get better at organizing the fonts that we hoard.
Right. We're trying to make room for you to buy more fonts. That's what we're doing. So you can freely buy more fonts. But look at it. It's so gorgeous. Okay, but when you buy a bundle, holy moly, that's next level a lot. So when you come in here, you can download the complete collection, which, by the way, this collection has some lovely logos built in with Lilux. So if you want those logos, you'll want to get the complete collection. But I tend to go to the quick install and download it. I don't know what other people do, but this just gets me all of the fonts. Now, did I put it in?
So the quick install, again, not everyone might be aware of this, but what our team do is they take all of the fonts out of the folders and the subfolders they're found in the main download, and they put all of them in just one giant folder. So you can basically select every single one. Yeah, exactly. You can select every one and install it in like one click.
Look at all the fonts. Okay, tell me this, Tom. When did you do that? Because for the longest time, I never went into the quick collection.
We did it a few years back.
Okay.
And this is really what we believe in as a team. It is asking and listening to our community and then implementing what you tell us is going to help you.
Yeah.
Like it sounds so simple, but it's so easy, I think, not to do that and do things the way they've always been. But, you know, from the quick install to the new account browsing, there's going to be so many more improvements this year because you're getting so vocal in the best possible way, saying we'd love this or this would help us, and then we just want to go build it for you.
If we build it, they will come. Okay. So listen, these fonts, look at all of them. Because of the quick install, you could literally just drag them into your default fonts folder and you're done. Or you could take a little time to get these fonts into a folder structure, which is the resource that I'm talking about that you guys have for setting up your folders. That would be a great beginning. Personally, what I like to use is the font manager, but I bring them in together. So I'm going to show you that, but like they're just all there. Now, if you were to just drag these into your font base folder, they're going to all be there for you, which is lovely. And that's all I did for the longest time. And they're all active, so you don't have to activate them because they're in the fonts folder and the Mac automatically activates them. And we're going to talk a little more about active and, you know, activating and deactivating. Do you do that at all, Tom?
No, I'm not very good at deactivating.
No. And it's okay. So let me see. Yeah, so I just want to keep moving here. Activate it and deactivate. So and it's called disable in Font Book. But when you put a font into the default folder, it will be auto activated, and you can open up Font Book and disable your fonts if you want. But if you've never done that, it might kind of surprise you when you open up Photoshop and you go to find a font and you barely have any fonts to look at because you've disabled them. So before you like decide you're just going to disable everything because they do use up a lot of resources, I would just like take a beat and a breath and think about maybe first getting to know your fonts, taking a look at them, cleaning up some of the fonts, and then maybe this isn't what people will want to do, but because I love Lightroom and it's a catalog system, people get super overwhelmed. They're like, I have 100,000 photos and I'll never get them sorted, and they want to get it all cleaned up. But my method is you come up with a system that you can use starting from kind of today forward, a structure that works for you. I'm going to show you collections. You do that first and get a little more comfortable with how font organization works. And then what if you spend a little time in a font management app, get more confident, and then you decide how you're going to deal with your, you know, how many did some people have? 30,000 or whatever it is. With that said, 3,000, 5,000, 30,000 fonts, that's not so bad. Like I have people with, you know, 100,000 photos that they have to go through. These are fonts, which isn't so bad. So I don't know, that people will have resistance to the idea that they could just start today, but because it's so overwhelming, they don't do it at all, and they just keep in the chaos. So that's my little pep talk on that, which is what I said here. Obviously, I don't do keynotes very often. I promise this is to keep me on track. So any guesses on my favorite font manager? Because you might have saw it up on my screen. It's Typeface. I
mean, it's got a pretty cute looking fox attached.
I was going to say, how
good start.
Sweet is that? It's a really, okay, now it is for Mac, but there's other ones for Windows, and they have similar qualities, all of them. So this is Typeface too, and it is my all new favorite font app. And I have a little shout out to the developer of Typeface, because I've been messaging and I cannot believe the support and help and guidance. In fact, I just had an email about 20 minutes before the live with lots of tips for us for using Typeface. And I sent it to Kat, so it will go up with this.
Interesting.
So impressed. Like, it's like an email. Okay. Here's the email, just so you can see. These are all the suggestions. Like, you know, tips for people who want to like kind of really use the app well. And it's so well laid out, like talking about the collections and how to use them as a designer, like step by step. So I can't say enough. It's Floor from Typeface app. Can't say enough.
Very cool.
So by the way, the price tag, because some of them are super expensive.
Yeah, they really are.
$26.99 Canadian.
Cool.
That's pretty darn good. Also, you can get it on the App Store, and I have it because I have a Set App subscription. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but Set App is an app subscription plan that has all kinds of different apps, so you can try lots of different apps, and it's part of my Set App subscription. So that's how I ended up trying it, and it's really, really lovely. So that's my shout out for Typeface, and I think we'll go into Typeface. But when you install Typeface for the first time and you open it up, any fonts that you have in that default font folder, I think everyone knows now where that is. Any fonts that you have, Typeface will find them. And they'll be active in Typeface by default, because if they're active in the font book, they're going to be active. And the reason I'm bringing this up is one thing you might want to think about if you were going to try it is you could maybe go into Font Book and maybe clean up some of your fonts if you want to. before you even open up Typeface, or just bring them in and you can clean them up in there.
So remember, we're just giving examples. There's so many, like even on Mac, there's so many different softwares you can use. So it's kind of impossible to cater to every software on every OS. But the principles Kim's going to dig into in this session should apply to everyone.
Exactly. Thank you, Tom. And also the resource that you guys have in the video, she covers oh my gosh, what's it called? Your team will remember. Font Base. I think it's Font Base, which is Windows and Mac. And that's in that video. But try to not like just hear Mac and Typeface and App Store and think that you can't like use some of these ideas to get your own system in place, because they really do all work very similarly. So, okay. So let's go ahead and, I'm going to open up bring the Typeface app on. So this is it. And I love a clean aesthetic, and I think it's lovely. And you can control what you see in here. You can change the sizes, and mostly all font managers work this way. So one of the things that it has is an option to just click on your fonts to select different fonts. And as I'm doing this, they're landing in a quick collection. It's like you're gathering, kind of like this. You're just gathering fonts. So say you wanted to go through your fonts and you're like, I don't really like any of them anymore, like specific ones. And you could just tap, 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 and they would land here in the quick collection. So if I just clear this quick collection, and
that's so perfect, like especially when I'm doing a brand project or a logo design historically, I'll go through and I'll normally find like 10 to 20 different options for logo fonts. And you can just make a collection.
Yeah. And that's so interesting you say that, because you guys have all the tips that Flor sent over, but what was outlined is using quick collections as a designer for your project. So you just start going through and you start kind of selecting. They'll go into a quick collection, which you can turn into a collection if you want to and keep it. But if I know some of my people are here and they know what Lightroom is and quick collections in Lightroom, it's that same concept. But I do want to point out a couple of things that kind of threw me off with this. Just as far as selecting, you'll just see here I'm tapping to select, and notice my quick collection is growing. It's up to 7, but I only have 3. But do you see the number 4 here and the 2? That's because within it, there are more styles. Which I have it set to collapse the styles, because, like some fonts, the collection from Design Cuts running right now, it's like so many fonts within the font. So any of these numbers indicate that. But that is a setting, and I'm thinking it's a setting in any font management system somewhere. I have it set to collapse families. So meaning I can open them up, but when I'm previewing, I get the overview of the font family. So what I thought I would just touch on, because it's just things that threw me off when I started to use this app, are a few preferences. And I think because it's really minimalist, you kind of have to dig in a little bit. And all of those tips are so good that Flora sent over. But this little ditty right here, collection priority, I checked it because otherwise I had to hit the command key to select what I wanted to select. So by checking this, I can just tap and it will select. So that's one preference. And I'm just going to go through a couple of other things in here. Library, if you wanted to bring in your Adobe fonts, you can bring them in by tapping Import Adobe Fonts. And they'll show up under Live Type over here. And you can bring in all of the Google fonts. It's 3,400 Google fonts. To be honest, I brought them in and I took them out because it's just too many. But you can do that. And you can turn on to auto activate when you go into Photoshop. Like, for example, if you've made something with a font that you've disabled or deactivated, as it's called here, if you have that set, it should activate it, although I see sometimes a bit of delay. Now, about activating and deactivating your fonts, if you've just been swimming along with all of your fonts in your fonts folder and you start deactivating everything, you'll notice, like, where's my font? What's happening? Like, it's a different workflow. And one of the things Flor suggested is if you have the quick collection, right? You gather them, you activate them, you go work in your application of choice, you finalize it, and then you can just come back in and deactivate it because they're all in a collection. I mean, that's pretty impressive. And there's all kinds of ways to view your font. So if you come up here, by default, it actually is this. Okay, this is a designer thing. Hamburg fonts, what? Okay, don't even try to say it, Kim. Did you know that? I did not know that. I had to Google it. I'm like, what is Hamburg fonts? Anyhow, I thought it was just a quirky thing. So font stiff. Anyhow, it's a designer thing, apparently. So you have that, but you can choose all of these different options for your view. And like I did, I had design cuts typed in here. So like you were talking about, Tom, when you're making a logo, you just put it in and you can see it in front of your eyes. So a lovely feature, lots of options here. What else was I going to show you? Well, here's my quick collection, right? And if you were working on a project, whatever it is, you can drag these into a collection. So this little plus sign down here, it's called tags here in typeface. So any font manager will have something like this, tag or collections. It's collections in font book. So you can create a new tag and my new project or whatever you want to call it. And that will just show up alphabetically. It's right there. And then I just moved that out accidentally. Shoot. Okay. Because I tapped it, but I would just drag these to my new project. So they were in a quick collection, and then I put them into the my new project collection. And then I could clear my quick collection at any time or go out of here. One thing that I like, if you bring in fonts, so you buy something new from Design Cuts and you bring it in, and we'll talk about that. You have the last import option. And then if you want to, you could put them into a collection, my new fonts, because if you ever buy fonts and then you forget that you bought them, so you could put them into a collection so you spend a little time with them. And then you could put them into a structure of collections.
We've kind of looked at some of the free options. We're looking at a paid option. Again, I think it's pretty common across Mac and PC, some of these ideas that Kim's sharing with how to properly use collections, tags, how to deactivate some of your fonts and be smarter within that, and how to also use the account section within your Design Cuts account and use some of the improvements there to easily find the fonts you need.
Okay, good. So if anyone has questions, let me know. But I thought it would be kind of cool. I want to hit home that I can't stress enough that if you have 30,000 fonts, if you think you're going to conquer that all immediately and you've never even managed your fonts, I would take a breath and start with something as simple as deciding to go through some of the fonts, letting some go, and then maybe getting a system in place for today moving forward as a starting point. Do people feel good about that? Is there resistance to that?
I think it's smart. And so I talk about this in business and life. But there's this concept called Frankensteining, which is when over a long period of time, you keep bolting things on to your business, or in this case, your font collection, and you'll bolt on and you bolt on and you bolt on, and suddenly you end up with a monster because you just added so many things on. And not only that, but your tastes and your needs will change. So the font you loved 10 years ago, which is still on your system, you might not love anymore, and your taste has improved. And so you no longer have a need. So I think even if you have 30,000 fonts, I guarantee you could probably hand select 1,000 to 3,000 out of those and start pulling them into new collections. And it's like a spring cleaning. It's kind of refreshing, right? You just end up with the absolute best of the best.
Yeah, and so freeing. So if you did that and then you decide on a system that you're going to use moving forward, it's going to be so good because we kind of gravitate to the newest thing anyways. So what if we had some order in it? But also, like, I was going through my fonts and I'm like, what the heck? Like, what did I think I liked that for, you know? But your taste does evolve. So
yeah, or like you had a random quirky project years ago.
yeah,
The font
exactly.
was kind of weird looking, but it suited that project, and you never needed it since.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because for me, it's not like I'm designing for other people. So, like, what am I going to do with all the fonts? But I still want them, and I even like consistently use the same fonts in my brand. So it's just like it's kind of crazy, but they're so fun and they're so beautiful. And so I feel like if I have some order, then I'll actually get creative with them, right? So, okay, so just going back to the fonts. So if you use a font manager and typeface, and I would say like any font manager is just going to bring those in for you. And I think some font managers will scan your entire system. But if you decide you're going to set up a structure for your fonts, even a folder called My Fonts in your documents. I have mine on an external hard drive. So you start with My Fonts, and then you start to bring in, like, for example, the latest collection from Design Cuts. You can see it sitting over here. And these are all of the different places that I have fonts, but I told Typeface that they're there. And in they come. And you'll notice they're not activated. To activate a font, so this is that latest collection. They're here, I can see them, but they're not actually active until I activate them. So that's the difference when you kind of point it to other places versus the ones that are in your default font folder. Mm-hmm. So imagine I get this collection. It wouldn't take me very long to get some order with this. And what I've done is I've set up some collections and these are not in-depth collections, and I'm not like, I don't go too complicated, like DC fonts, fave, modern scripts, brand fonts, brush, pen, commercial, font families. These are my collections, and I thought we could maybe talk about that a little bit. But for example, the Lux script, I could just go ahead and drag that to a few places, because collections aren't folders, so you can have things in multiple places.
That's great, because you could have it in like script, but you could also have it in my favorites, for example.
Exactly. So that's why I love collections. And I know we're not talking Lightroom, but it's the same thing in Lightroom. You can have your photos and collections in multiple collections. You're not duplicating. You're just being able to see them in your different collections. So this font, Lux's script, I could have it in my favorite modern script. I could have it in a project. I could have it in my DC folder, right? So that's the beauty of collections. Alternatively, you can make your upper folder and your subfolders based on categories. And that resource video that you guys have breaks that down so good. So people should watch that if they're wanting to do a folder. But also, even if you're not going to do folders, if you might kind of implement collections, the breakdown of the different styles of fonts is just really, really good. And I just thought I would show you here, if you want to create a collection, which is a tag, you tap on the plus sign. And if you do new tag, you can create a collection just like we did for my new project. And if you want to create like subsets, like I have here, which I love that because then I don't have to see everything so long. What you can do is you have your upper collection. And if you notice my collection has a dash in front of it, I named it that so it would be at the top. So it's all alphabetical. So I wanted that at the top. But if I want to add to this collection, so these are the ones I have so far. What else could I add? I could right click and create a subtag. And it pops up down here. At first I was like, why isn't it doing anything? Because it's down here. So I'm trying to think, what else could I do? What other styles besides what I have? Printing, script, I don't know, messy. This is the technical terms for fonts. And so now I have that collection that I can start to add to. For the really geeky, like organized font people or designers, don't judge me. So DC fonts, fave modern script. I have brand fonts. meaning the ones I use for my brand, brush pen, commercial, font families, future projects, glyphs, grunge, messy, personal, meaning not commercial, printing, sans, faves, serif, faves, and typewriter fonts. So that's what I have in my collections, but also within here, there is a style section. So say you want to find your favorite serifs, be great. Start down here in the serif. I've noticed it doesn't always find everything, especially for script, but start in here and you utilize quick collection by tapping, right? And then they're just being all selected. And then if those were in fact my fave serifs, I just drag it over top of serif faves. And I could have those in there, but I could also have them in my DC collection, and I could have them in a recent or an upcoming project collection, and so on. How's that? How does that
I can
feel?
well imagine. I'm kind of thinking to the future here.
Yes.
I bet we're going to start seeing some interesting things with AI, with font management, where it's going to automatically recognize which ones are your favorites and you're drawn to and use the most. And then I bet it's going to start actually recognizing similar fonts and saying, this is similar to fonts that you already love in your collection. You might enjoy these.
Yeah, you're welcome, it says, right? That would be amazing. I wanted to go into, I need to touch on this. Do you see how I have this selected? Because of that preference, just in case people get this, because I told you I have this checked, if I want to open it to see it, I need to command click to open it because I set that preference. So just know you have to command and click to get into the view of the font. How good though, right? Like you just see it all right in front of you. And if you want, you can skinny this up for projects, pull it out, and you can compare fonts as well. So if I go to this guy here, do you see how it compares? Like,
oh yeah,
when I have selected Adobe Caslon, here's how the others compare. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it kind of helps with pairing potentially. Especially
if you narrowed it down to not every font you have. That could be really cool.
Yeah.
So kind of interesting.
That is cool.
So I want to finish two things. One is your Adobe fonts. If you have the subscription and you were like me and you went crazy and you activated a whole bunch of Adobe fonts, those definitely suck up your resources. So what you can do is deactivate a bunch of your Adobe fonts and you can always get them again. That's a huge shift for me. I had I had hundreds of Adobe fonts activated. And so what I did quickly, and you can just go out to fonts.adobe.com and sign in to do this. But notice now, the only Adobe font I have in here is my Garamond font. I just kind of leaned it up. I can always go back, but I just wanted to kind of give you a little nudge to consider that. And, okay, we talked about this, collections, deactivating fonts. So depending on the application, how you do that is different. In Typeface, you can just tap the little corner. And if you're, if all else fails, I right click. And then these are, if anyone's interested, I just grab this from Adobe. These are just different ideas for maybe collections that you might want to use. I don't know if anyone wants to screenshot it, maybe just to give them some ideas. Because when I was trying to think of my collections, I went like really blank. Or go on Design Cuts and see how you guys have broken out the fonts. But also get like a little more personal and creative with like, what do you think of when you think of a font? Because I don't know like technical font terms, like I know serif and sans serif and script. I don't know all of the different terms, but I kind of went with words that resonated with me. And maybe separating by commercial from Design Cuts, you get your commercial license versus free fonts that you've downloaded, and being really aware of that for the projects. And okay, this is more me hitting it home. Just take a breath. You don't have to conquer it all. Don't get so caught in that you never create anything again. I've literally had people paralyzed, unable to take more photos because they had so many photos. You know what I mean? So it could be the same. Like, we don't want it to be overwhelmed. We want it to feel good and fresh and I've got this kind of thing. And the only thing for Photoshop tips that I wanted to cover is just beware if you start disabling or deactivating your fonts, they're not going to be there in Photoshop. So I just wanted you to know that, because when I first did it, I'm like, what the heck? Where are all my fonts, right? Because it's a different workflow. That's all. So what do you think?
I think that was really great just to get all of us thinking about this a little bit more, because you're right, it's so easy. And the tendency is just to kind of keep doing things the old way and chucking them in one big folder. But yeah, like when you start actually preparing a project and you can go through these beautiful collections and browse things in an organized way, it's way better. So yeah, Kim, thank you so much again. I'll see you soon. Appreciate you.
We'll see you. Thanks so much. Bye, guys.
Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Take care.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.